Now, on my angle tonight, I have an admission to make, that I was wrong. You see, a few months ago, as the COVID-19 pandemic was only just taking root in the country and schools had just closed, I had hoped that children would in fact be safer with their parents than even when they're in school. I was wrong. Over the last few months, I have come to the conclusion that children should somehow go back to school. Of course, I'm aware that this is no easy task. I'm aware that the risk of COVID-19 is real. And I'm aware that we have over 11 million children who were in school before March 15th. I also know that many schools barely have enough room even without COVID-19. But please, hear me out. Over the last 5 months or so, we have seen Kenyan children go through extremely turbulent times. According to the World Health Organization, no less, school closures, especially in Africa, are potentially exacerbating risks of teenage pregnancies, of violence against children, of substance abuse, of anxiety, loneliness, and isolation. Haven't we seen that spike in our own country in the last 5 months? Just today, the World Health Organization and the UN Agency for Children, UNICEF, called for what they called the safe reopening of schools. The WHO Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Ageyo, saying that the extended closure was now tantamount to trading one adversity for another. UNICEF, on its part, says it has noted a drop in proper nutrition with more than 10 million children missing out on school meals. I'm sure a number of those children can be found right here in Kenya. You see, when schools closed in March this year, the reason was clear. Schools constituted some of the most crowded spaces in the country and therefore appeared to be a fertile ground for the spread of the coronavirus. The decision to shut them all was thus timely and appropriate. But the subsequent events have been difficult to comprehend. The Ministry of Education has indicated that our children will only go back to school once the COVID-19 curve has flattened. Now that sounds logical, but it is a very problematic strategy. How is it that the government has not waited for the curve to be flattened before allowing people to go back to their offices? How is it that markets are open and public transport is operating? What about airlines and trains? They are all back. I've not talked about places of worship, restaurants, and other public spaces. In fact, even the very children are somehow mingling out there, going out together in the estates and the villages where they live. My point is that the government has somehow found ways of safely reopening some spaces, but continues to kick the can down the road when it comes to schools. My question tonight is this: have you heard anything at all that the government is doing to ensure schools can safely reopen? I mean, we can't surely just rely on the flattening of the curve. What if the curve persists till end of next year? What if it stays steep in 2023? Will our children stay at home for that long? Shouldn't the Minister of Education now be giving us a blow-by-blow account of what they are doing to get schools ready? How much money has been sent to schools to expand their infrastructure? How much is set aside for extra classrooms or dormitories? What about water and soap? What provisions exist for masks and other supplies that might be needed in schools? That is not what we are hearing. All we have heard from Jogo House is a resignation to fate, putting the future of our children in the hands of the virus. In any case, a lot of new information has now emerged over this virus since March. For instance, it is now clear that children between the ages of 5 and 18 are not necessarily at the greatest risk of contracting the virus. In fact, this group accounts for just 2.5% of all confirmed cases around the world. They therefore cannot be the most dangerous segment of the population. I want to finish with the words of the WHO Africa Regional Director, Mashidiso Moeti. She said earlier today, and I quote, "The decision to reopen schools is not an easy one. Not an easy one at all for health experts, administrators, or parents, but it is the right one." End of quote. The government itself has told us to learn how to live with the virus. That must include 11 million children whose education and future careers are now in suspended animation. That is my angle tonight.